Greetings, 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 greetings. It is I, your King, King Clifford Jefferson, a Senator Godfrey, the fifth kind of land Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. I am the incarnation of who you know as Jesus Christ. Forgive me, I have a little on my beard. I come with another marvelous lesson. Part two of the previous one I just did. Forgive me for my attire. I'm home, relaxing. So I just figured I'd give you a little bit of my time. But this is based off part two. So without further ado, I think I got an hour on my screen, so I'm just gonna get on with it. I'm gonna unfreeze myself so that way you can concentrate on the lessons, okay? Right. So once again, this is who I'm speaking of in the spirit of King Edgar Jefferson. His name is Godfrey. Godfrey means peaceful place. He was called King Edgar the Peaceful, meaning that everything he ruled was peaceful. He was actually the ruler of an empire, which we call Albion. So I'm going to give you the information that's coming from him through me by way of what we call incarnation, and I'm able to do this by way of filling that position as the king through what we call incorporation. Incorporation is the concrete term that we use for this abstract term, incarnation. Okay, everyone who hears these terms, please look those definitions up. Without further ado, let me get started. Last time we left off, we were talking about the Great Sale. Yes, the Great Sale. The Great Sale of the United States of America. Okay, the Great Sale of the United States of America. This came about on July 4th, 1776, the same day that the independence from Great Britain was declared by the 13 colonies. The Continental Congress named the first committee to design a great sail or national emblem for the country. Similar to other nations, the United States needed an official symbol of sovereignty to formalize a seal or sign for international treaties and transactions. It took 6 years, 3 committees, and the contribution of 14 men before the Congress finally accepted a design, which included elements proposed by each of the 3 committees of 1782. There were 3 committees, the first committee, the second committee, and the third committee. Before we get started with that, let me just show you sovereign immunity. Everybody who's viewing this or will be viewing this, please look this up. A real brief definition of sovereign immunity. Sovereign immunity or crown immunity is a legal doctrine whereby the sovereign or state cannot commit a legal wrong. It is immune from civil suits or criminal prosecution. Strictly speaking, in modern tech, in its own court. A similar stronger rule as regards foreign court is named state immunity. So sovereign immunity, or what we call crown immunity, is a legal doctrine where it means that the king can do no wrong. This history goes back, or this term goes back to the history dealing with the kings of England. Okay, this is what sovereign immunity means. Why? Because he cannot be tried in his own court. Now, I'm going to prove to you that the United States is not sovereign. You can look up Title 59 United States Code, parts of Title 59 of New Jersey Revised Statute 1-2, and they tell you that New Jersey is not sovereign. I think it's they gave up the legislature recognized sovereign immunity. The legislation does recognize sovereign immunity, not for entrepreneurs who go about their daily business or business activity, but it does recognize public entities as being sovereign, in which the state or the United States is not a public entity, it's a business, okay? Under Title 59, 3-13 of New Jersey Revised Statute, you see it where it said the state of New Jersey had gave up its sovereign immunity to be tried on the basis as what we call individuals or corporations. All right. And I'm going to show you that the United States had no sovereignty as well. All right. So we're dealing with the Great Sale. The first committee who designed the first Great Sale, as I said in my last lesson, or my last lecture, which you all viewed, shows the sale, the outverse, and the reverse side. The outverse side, you'll see, shows two figures or supporters known as the Liberty Women, one holding a spear with a Phrygian cap, and the other holding or holding up scales and a sword. She has a sword. Inside, you see what we call the 6 nations who people what we call North America. This is the rose of England, the thorn thistle of Scotland, the harp of Ireland, the fleur-de-lis of France, the eagle of what we call Germany, and the lion of what we call Holland. These are the 6 nations who what we call the nations who came here to North America by way of what we call the Act of Settlement of 1701. All right. And out of these nations came one nation, which we call the United States, or i.e. the 13 colonies, which is now called the 13 states, which now became 50 states, semi-states, that they have now. On the and we're going to read about the logo. It says the first committee consisted of Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams. All of these are presidents, I might add. The United States ain't even in existence at this particular time. It's still the states, colonies, who were under the crown. While they were three of the 5 primary authors of the Declaration of Independence, they had little experience in heraldry and sought the help of Pierre Eugene du Simitière, an artist living in Philadelphia, who would later also design the state still of Delaware and New Jersey, and also start a museum of the Revolutionary War. Each of these men proposed a design for the sale. Franklin chose an allegorical scene from an Exodus, describing in his notes Moses standing on the shore and extending his hand over the sea, thereby causing the same to overwhelm the Pharaoh, who is sitting in the open chariot, a crown on his head and a sword in his hand. This is where you get your the Genesis stories from, all right? Or the book of Exodus, all right? The rays from the pillar of fire and the cloud reached into Moses to express that he acts by the command of a deity model. Rebellion to tyrant is obedience to God. Jefferson's suggestion as depiction of the children of Israel in the wilderness, led by a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, for the front of the sail. And Hinks and Horse of the 2 brothers who were the legendary leaders of the first Anglo-Saxon settlers in Britain, for the reverse side of the sail. Adams chose a painting known as the Judgment of Hercules, where the young Hercules must choose to travel either on the flowery path of self-indulgence or the rugged, more difficult uphill path of duty to others and honor to himself. In August 20th, 1776, Eugene du Simitière showed his design, which was more along conventional heraldic lines. The shield had 6 sections, each representing the countries from which these states had been peopled, as I just said. Using this symbol for England, Scotland, Ireland, France, Germany, and Holland. Surrounded by the initials of all the 13 states, which were 13 colonies, all came by way of the Settlement Act of 1701. The supporters were a female figure representing liberty, holding an anchor and a tomahawk, which was changed to a scale and a sword, as I showed you earlier. The crest was the eye of Providence and a radiant of the triangle whose glory extends over the shield and beyond the figure. And the motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, i.e. all these 6 nations, i.e. countries, come one, i.e. United States, i.e. the colony, 13 colonies, and the skull at the bottom. On August 20th, 1776, the committee presented their report to Congress. This committee members chose du Simitière design, though it was changed to remove the anchor and hope and replace the soldier with Lady Justice holding a sword and a balance. As I just stated, surrounding the main element was the inscription of the seal of the United States of America, with the Roman numerals denoting to the day 1776. For the reverse, Franklin designed of Moses parting the Red Sea was used. Congress was, however, not impressed, and on the same day ordered that the report lie on the table, ending the work of the committee. I repeat, Congress was, however, not impressed, and on the same day ordered that the report lie on the table, ending the work of the committee. As we said, the four parties representing the design were England, which represent the red rose, Scotland, which represents the thistle, Ireland, the hawk, France represents the fleur de lis, Germany, the eagle, and Holland representing the lion. Okay, follow through, follow along. We're gonna move forward. So it said, the issue lied on the table. So those who are viewing must be wondering what does it mean to lie on the table? Well, let's look that up. It's called the table. Difference between this meaning in America and British usage. Pay very close attention. Pay very close attention. Both the American and the British dialect have the expression to table a topic as a short way of saying to lay the topic on the table, and to make a topic lie on the table, But these have opposite meanings in the different varieties of the languages. I say again, to lay the topic on the table and to make a topic lie on the table have opposite meanings in different varieties of languages. The British meaning is based on the idea of parliamentarian gathering around a table with the bill laid upon so that all may point to the section for discussion. The American sense draws on the image of taking a paper that one had been examining and laying it aside, ending any discussion about it, such as in the case with the Great Sale. All right, such in the case with the Great Sale, because we defining the term lying on the table. In America, they mean that throw an issue or suspend an issue or not even deal with it at all. In England, which is now occupied by the British, it meant to bring the issue up for discussion. All right. The phrase put on the table can have the same meaning of making the issue available for debate in both dialects. According to the American Heritage Dictionary, on the table in American English always has the two opposite meanings, up for discussion and put aside for consideration at a later date, depending on the context. The British meaning to the table is to begin consideration of a proposal. This comes from the use of the term to describe physical laying of legislation on the table in the British Parliament. Once an item on the order paper has been laid on the table, it becomes the carried subject for debate. The American meaning of the table is to postpone or to suspend consideration of a motion. In American usage, to allow consideration of a topic again, it would have to be taken from the table. The use of expressions such as tabling a motion for setting aside or killing a main motion can cause confusion due to the usage of such expressions in the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth countries, where they have opposite meanings. That is to propose a motion for consideration. So we see that in America, the term lying on the table or to table the issue means to not even deal with it or to suspend it or to dispose of it, versus the term used in British or England, which means to bring the matter up for the discussion. Very, 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 very important. All right. As we scroll down, use in the United States. Robert Rules of Orders, newly revised, is the law that they use for what we call standing rule. Let me type that in real quick. Those who claim they know government, this is what you should be talking about. So they tabled the topic based off the discussion of the Great Sale, which was laid down by Eugene D. Simitière based off heraldry. And we know that heraldry goes back to succession. All right. Americans didn't adopt that principle. They didn't know a thing about heraldry because they were colonists. They came from other countries, which we're going to prove. So we know that America, as Henry VIII said, was an empire, or British Empire. We know the British Empire succeeded, as I said in my second to last video, was subject to what was left over from the Portuguese and the Spanish Empire. And the Spanish Empire are descended from the Castile, or the Kingdom of Castile, which goes back to Eleanor of Castile, who was married to, if I'm not mistaken, Edward I, who was descendant of the Plantagenet crown. All right? And these were the empires or the kingdoms or the nations or under the authority of their crowns that took possession of the western side of what we call North America. All right? Let's get forward. Let's continue. It says the standing rule. As you can see, you see the Phrygian cap, you see the seal of the United States Senate. Just get a brief discussion what the standing rule is. Got to move fast. The standing rules of the Senate are parliamentary procedures adopted by the United States that govern its procedures. The Senate power to establish rules derives from the Article 1, Section 5 of the United States Constitution. Each House may determine the rules of the proceedings. This House in parliamentary law was called either the House of Commons or the House of Lords. Well, the Senate in the United States is called the House of Lords, and Parliament under their House of Commons. And we had three commons: the House of Commons of the United Kingdom, which is presently being used. Prior to that, we had the House of Commons of Great Britain, and prior to that, we had the House of Commons of England. Three distinct parliamentary houses had their own councils. Very important. But we're talking about the standing rules on the parliamentary procedures adopted by North America. All right. And all in lieu of what we're dealing with, that sale or the Great Sale, because the Great Sale in England was the Magna Carta. The Constitution in lieu of the quorum created by the what we call the Senate and the House of Representatives, which sits in the Capitol. You have the White House, which is the executive officer or the executive house for the president, who resides as head of state. So the Constitution provides that a majority of the Senate constitute a quorum to do business under the rules and customs. Remember, customs must not run contrary to their use. Their custom was created by way of statutory law, which limit their custom. And a custom created by statutory law is no custom at all. A quorum is always assumed to be present unless a quorum is called, explicitly demonstrating otherwise. We call it calling Parliament. Any senator may request a quorum called by suggestion of the absence of a quorum. A clerk then calls the rolls of the Senate and notes which members are present. In practice, senators almost always request quorum calls, not to establish the presence of a quorum, but to temporarily delay proceedings without having to adjourn the session. So when we're dealing with the creation of the sale by the first committee, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, the recommended sale that was called upon by Eugene du Simitière was tabled under these parliamentary proceedings under what they call their standing rules. All right. And there were different types of standing rules. They're called parliamentary procedures. History of parliamentary procedures. The term parliamentary procedure gets its name from its use in parliamentary systems of government. Now, we know that the United States adopted theirs through their standing rule as established by that statute. But it came from what we call the parliamentary law, which was established by the House of Commons. And as we said, we got three Houses of Commons: the House of Commons of the United Kingdom, that of Great Britain, and that of England. We're not even talking about, and that's what we call in the United States the Senate, the House of Representatives. The House of Commons is called the House of Representatives here in what we call North America. 1583, you see it right there. All right. But it says in the Parliament of England. So the House of Commons from the United Kingdom and Great Britain descended from the Parliament of England. And we know that that goes to the Settlement Act, which we will now go to, because we're dealing with the Great Sale. And we know the Great Sale represents the 6 nations who came here to North America. And we know the first one they said was England, which is represented by the Red Rose. Let's just get a history with the Red Rose. First, let's go, the Red Rose. The Tudor Rose, sometimes called the Union Rose, is the traditional florid heraldic anthem of England. Remember, Eugene D. Simitière knew about heraldry. The founding fathers, when they went to create their sale, didn't know a thing about it, so they called upon a professional. And he suggested the red rose for England, for the Parliament of England, from the House of Commons that was created from England, not including the House of Lords. All right. It said the Tudor rose, or called the Union rose, is traditional floral heraldic emblem of England, and it takes its name in origin from the House of Tudor, which united with the House of Lancaster, where he descended down from, and the House of York. The Tudor's rose consists of 5 white interpetals representing the House of York and 5 red outer petals to represent the House of Lancaster. 2 houses combined. And we know that these 2 houses were all cadet branches from the Plantagenet. The House of Lancaster was a cadet branch of the Royal House of Plantagenet, and which my house descended down from Godfrey, the 5th kind of Grand Duke. Okay, so let's go and qualify the Great Seal of the United States. Under the Records Act, signed by your first president, George Washington. George Washington was the 14th Chancellor of William and Mary's College. This is the Records Act, introduced by Theodore Sedgwick and signed in by the first president, George Washington, September 15th, 1789. Okay, this is the seal we're talking about. And we know it was many seals that were created by the first Congress. George Washington was not a part of that committee, which is Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams. But here we see the seal for the United States under the Records Act of 1789, which was created and signed in to law by who? George Washington, your first president. Mind blowing, I know it is. The Record Act, also known as an act to provide for safekeeping of acts, records, and the seals of the United States, and for other purposes, what was the 14th law passed by the United States Congress. And it was also the first law created in lieu of the Information Act. The act also directs the Secretary of State that ensure that every bill enacted or vetoed was published in at least 3 newspapers, making the nation's first Freedom of Information law, though its provisions will later be used to justify the withholding of information from the public. Did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? It just said, but the first Freedom of Information law, though its provisions will later be used to justify the withholding of information from the public, i.e. the people, i.e. those who first colonized here through the Settlement Act of what we call North America. All right, let's go ahead and let's go through that Settlement Act of 1701. The Act of Settlement. The Act of Settlement is the Act of Parliament of England. Everybody see that? Not Great Britain, not the United Kingdom. But it says the Parliament of England, but how can that be when the House of Tudors under this Settlement Act was done by the House of Tudors? In lieu of that red rose we're talking about. Remember the Reformation of the English Church, of the Church of England? All right, the Act 7 is the Act of Parliament of England that settled the succession to the English and the Irish crown to only Protestants, which passed in 1701. More specifically, anyone who became a Roman Catholic or who married one became disqualified to inherit the throne of England. This had the effect of disposing of remaining descendants of Charles I, other than his Protestant granddaughter, Queen Anne, as the next Protestant in line to the throne was Sophia of Hanover, a granddaughter of James VI of Scotland and the first of soon to be England, from his most junior surviving line, with the crown descending only to her non-Catholic heir. Sophia died shortly before the death of Queen Anne, and Sophia's son succeeded to the throne of King George I, starting what we call the Hanover dynasty in Britain. The Act of Supremacy Act of 1558 had confirmed the independence of the Church of England from the Roman Catholics under the English minority. This Act of Supremacy also came from the Supremacy Act that was created by Henry VIII. This is the Act of Supremacy of 1534. The first Act of Supremacy Act was passed the 3rd of November 1534 by the Parliament of England and granted King Henry VIII of England and subsequent monarch royal supremacy, such that he was declared the supreme head of the Church of England. Royal supremacy is specifically used to describe the legal sovereignty of the civil laws over the laws of the church in England. He also decreed what we call the Statute of Restraint. The Statute of Repeal, which declared that England was an empire. not Great Britain, not United Kingdom, but England was an empire. We now the British Empire is the largest empire in the world, but that succeeded from what Portuguese and Spain had succeeded from what we call the English Empire, who was ruled by King Edward the Peaceful, which I'm the reincarnation of. Okay, so we see the Supremacy Act of both monarchs from the House of Tudors put in force what we call the Settlement Act of 1701, which allowed those so-called immigrants, i.e., naturalized citizens, because North America nationals are naturalized citizens. That's how they procure citizenship by naturalization, which is called nationalization for those who settle here. Look up Calvin's case concerning Dred Scott versus Calvin. All right. Let's see. All right. So now we got to look at, as we said, parliamentary laws, procedures. All right, because we're dealing with the parliamentary procedures by the United States under their standing rules by Congress to lie on the table, which means to dispose of or do away with the first creation of a cell for what we call the United States. And we know what that cell looks like. We know what that cell looks like, all right. These are the six nations who colonized North America. And not talking about any national or nationalized citizen, now called a citizen of any United States or states. That includes all those who are here now. All right. So it says in the 16th and 17th century, the Parliament of England began adopting the rules of order. In the 1560s, Sir Thomas Smith began the process of writing down accepted procedures and published a book about them for the House of Commons in 1583. Well, let's look at one of them, and let's see what Thomas Jefferson says first. All right. A manual of parliamentary practice for the United States Senate of the United States by Thomas Jefferson. I suggest y'all get this book. A manual of parliamentary practice, importance of the rule. Section 1, importance of adhering to the rule. Mr. Onslow, the ablest among the speakers of the House of Commons, used to say it was the maxim he had often heard when he was a young man. Keep that name, Mr. Onslow, in mind. I'm gotta be fast. From old and experienced members, that nothing tended more to throw power into the hands of the administration and those who acted with the majority of the House of Commons. Then a neglect of or a departure from the rules of proceeding that these forms, as instituted by our ancestors, operated as a check and control of the actions of the majority, and that they were in many instances a shelter of protection to the minority against the attempts of power. So far, the maxim is certainly true and is founded in good sense that as it always in the power of the majority by their numbers to stop any improper measures proposed on the part of their opponents. The only weapons by which the minority can defend themselves against similar attempts from those in power are the forms and rules of proceedings, which have been adopted as they were found necessary from time to time and are become the law of the House by strict adherence to which the weaker party can only protect from those irregularities and abuses, which these forms were intended to check. And with the oneness of power is but too often apt to suggest too large a successful majority. And whether these forms be in all cases the most rational or not is really not of so great of importance. It is much more material that there should be a rule to go by that what the rule is, than by what the rule is, than by what the rule is. That there may be a uniformity of proceedings in business, not subject to the caprice of the speaker of compatriousness of the member. It is very material that order, decency, and regularity be preserved and dignified in the public body. So who is this Onslaught we're talking about? We got two of them, Richard Onslaught. Richard Onslaught, from 1668 until 1716, was a British Whig politician who sat in the English in the British House of Commons. From 1675 to 1715, he was the Speaker of the House of Commons from 1708 to 1710 and the Chancellor of Exchequer from 1745 to 1715. Key point, Speaker of the House of Commons. Speaker of the House of Commons, because this is who Thomas Jefferson making reference to. We also have Arthur Onslaught. He was also a member of the House of Commons. So Arthur Onslaught was an English politician who sat in the House of Commons at various times between 1641 and 1648. And let's not forget Brother Harley. Okay. And this is another gentleman that we need to, Robert Harley. This gentleman. Robert Harley, Oxford and Earl of Mortimer, was an English statesman in the period of the late Stuart and the early Gregorian period. He began his career as a Whig before defecting the new Tory ministry. He was raised to the peerage of Great Britain as early as 1711. Between 1711 and 1714, he served as Lord High Treasurer, effectively under Queen Anne's chief minister, i.e. PM. He has been called prime minister, although it is generally accepted that the de facto first minister to be the prime minister was Robert Walpole in 1721. All right, let's see what else. So that means that he served under Queen Anne. All right. So that means that he was the Speaker of the House of Commons and he served under the monarch. So who is these speakers of the House of Commons? Let's look at the House of Commons first of all. House of Commons of the United Kingdom. This is the lower house, which the United States House of Representatives got their authority from, or they sent it down from, based off their adopted parliamentary procedures called their standing rules. All right, we're going to read about Thomas Jefferson. I don't want to get off track. All right, I'm just so you have what we call the House of Commons of the United Kingdom. Everybody see that. Look that up on your own time. You also have the House of Commons of what we call Great Britain. That came through the Treaty of Union of 1707. The House of Commons of Great Britain was the lower house of the Parliament of Great Britain between 1707 and 1801. In 1707, as a result of the Acts of Union of that year, it replaced the House of Commons of England and the third estate of the Parliament of Scotland as one of the most significant changes brought about by the union of the Kingdom of England, Scotland, and the Kingdom of Great Britain. All right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Now you also got, so we just went through the House of Commons of the United Kingdom, the House of Commons of Great Britain, and you also got the House of Commons of England. Everybody say it. Three distinct Houses of Commons, which the House of Representatives descended down from. The House of Commons of England was the lower house of the Parliament of England, which incorporated Wales from its development in the 14th century to the Union of England and Scotland in 1707, when it was replaced by the House of Commons of Great Britain after the 1707 Act of Union, and was passed in both English and Scotland Parliament at that time. And in 1801, with the Union of Great Britain and Ireland, the Houses was in turn replaced by the House of Commons of the United Kingdom. Did everybody hear that? Did y'all all hear that? The Parliament of England developed from the Magnum Concilium that advised English monarchs in medieval times. This Royal Council, meeting for a short period, include ecclesiastics, noblemen, and representatives of the counties known as Knights of the Shire. The chief duty of the council was to approve taxes proposed by the crown. In many cases, however, the council demanded the redress of the people's grievances before proceeding to vote on taxation, thus the development of the legislative power. The first parliament to invite representatives of the major towns was Montfort's Parliament in 1265. Okay, Montfort Parliament. Simon de Montfort, a royal baron, He wasn't only a royal baron. We also had other barons. Let's get a list of the speakers of the Houses of Commons. All right, let's get a list of the speakers of the House of England. List of speakers of the Houses of Commons of England. First one was Peter de Montfort. Here you see it. First identified presiding officer of English House of Commons. First English Parliament, 11th of June, 1259. Peter de Montfort. You got all these speakers of the House. Then it jumps to speakers of the House of Commons of England from 1377 to 1707. Sir Thomas Hewford. It's going all the way down. Keep going. These all descended down from the Houses of Commons. All right, too long a list, so let's just jump to the list of speakers from the British House of Commons. Because we went all the way back from the time of our ancestors, right? When they went away, which was a resultant in what we call the Magna Carta, with Simon de Montfort, Peter de Montfort, and another de Montfort, which I don't want to go through now for the lack of time. This is speakers of the British House of Commons. So we're not talking about the English House of Commons now. We're talking about the part of the House of Commons of Great Britain who were British monarchs. The list of speakers of the House of Commons of Great Britain from 1707 to the Treaty of Union to 1800, when they united and became the House of Commons of the United Kingdom. The first speaker was who? John Smith. Everybody see that? Next one was Sir Richard Onslow. Also, Arthur Onslow, right here, which is Thomas Jefferson is speaking about in his book on parliamentary procedures. Let's go back to it. Hope you're following along. Let's go to the privileges of these members sitting in Congress. So we see what Onslow said. Section 1 we read. One was dealing with the obeying the rule. Part 2 deals with the legislator. The legislator is where the capital sits at, which is the Senate and the House of Representatives. And nowadays will be the House of Lords and the House of Commons. Let me just show you the House of Lords. We know the House of Commons of England, and we also have a House of Lords. House of Lords, also known as the House of Peers, is the upper house of Parliament of the United Kingdom. So the United Kingdom, Great Britain, and England has an upper house. It's called the House of Lords, which is the temporal and spiritual. Everybody understand that. But we first must go to the origin where it stems from, the Parliament of England. Today's Parliament of the United Kingdom largely descends in practice from the Parliament of England. Everybody see that? What is the Parliament of England? You see our seal. It spares our seal we use in it presently. Right there. This is what we use. The Parliament of England was the legislature of the Kingdom of England. The Kingdom of England. This was preceded by Wittenmont. The origin of Parliament can be traced to the 10th century when the unified Kingdom of England was forged from the several smaller kingdoms. In Anglo-Saxon England, the king would hold deliberate assemblies of nobles and prelates called witan. These assemblies number anywhere from 25 to 100 of participants, including bishops, abbots, aldermen, and deans. Witan met regularly during the 3 feasts of Christmas, Easter, and Whitsun, and other times. Okay, so there you see it, the origin of the House of Lords and the House of Commons. All right, but we got a problem with that because we know that the United States Great Seal, which came from the Magna Carta seal, which was started by the House of Lords, which was established by Henry II, son of John, son of Godfrey, the 5th Count of Anjou, which I descend down from. Okay, let's see. Great Seal of the United States. Going back to it. We know it's protected by the Records Act, the one submitted by du Simitière, as it said, represents England, Scotland, Ireland, France, Germany, and Holland. These were all the, so they didn't even mention Portuguese and Spain, because all of these succeeded, everyone succeeded Portuguese and Spain except France and England. England and France had the longest ongoing war against each other, going back to what we call the Plantagenet and Capitan Wars. All right, called the 100-Year Wars. There's two sets of them. All right, so we know the Great Seal represents Europe, England, and we know England goes back to the Rose of Tudor, which was the uniting of the cadet branches of the York, the Lancasters, going back to the Plantagenet War. Okay, we also see under Title 18 of the United States Code clearly shows you that as a result of United States lying on the table, the bringing forth or the discussion or the discussion or the deliberating on the use of the seal was what they call lying on the table. In the United States, we mean it was disposed of, was not considered. This is a violation of law because it's supposed to be based off of origin, because you all descended down what we call from the parliamentary system or parliamentary procedures, which we call your standing rule. So it says Title 18, Crimes and Criminal Procedures, Section 713, use of likeness of the Great Seal of the United States and seal of the President and Vice President of the seal of the United States Senate, the seal of the United States House of Representatives, and the seal of the United States Congress. Everybody see that? Read that. This is the penalty that you get. For the lack of time, I'm not going to go through it, but you can look it up. Title 18 United States Code, Section 713, for a violation of using the likeness of the Great Seal. And we know the Great Seal was not the seal we see today. Those seals you see today was created by the 2nd and the 3rd committee. There was only 3 committees. The first committee, which is, I'm telling you where the origin of your seal comes from, which is a result of what happened between the House, the Red Rose, a uniting of the House of the Red, the House of York, the House of Lancasters, which was the undertaking of Henry VIII. And Henry VIII styled himself supremacy over the Church of England, not the English church. Everybody follow. Let's go to Thomas Jefferson manual. Now, this is a rule for the legislature. Let's deal with the privileges. Look what Thomas Jefferson says, where he bears my surname, because their seal was not created based off of origin with the succession. That means that he didn't have no successors other than the other 5 who came to North America, such as Scottish, Irish, Dutch, German, and Holland. All right, Holland is Dutch. All right. So the privileges of the members of the Parliament mentioned in Parliament. He didn't say Senate or House of Representatives. He said Parliament. The privileges of the members of Parliament from small and obscure beginnings have been advancing for centuries with a firm and never yielding pace. Claims seem to have been brought forward from time to time and repeated till some example of their admission enables them to build laws on that example. An example, i.e. a model parliament. You're going back to the Commonwealth. Commonwealth is an interregnum. An interregnum is what we call a parole, a prorogation, which is a term Thomas Jefferson is going to use. We can only therefore state the point of progression at which they now are. It is now acknowledged that one, that they are at all times exempted from question elsewhere for anything said in their own house, that during the time of privileges, two, neither a member himself, his wife, or his servants, familiaries, sue, for any matter of their own may be arrested or mezzanine process in any civil suit. So they're saying that they have crown immunity. And we already said sovereign immunity is crown immunity. This is what they're saying they have. Nor be detained or under execution though levied before time of their privileges, nor impleaded, cited, or subpoenaed in any court, nor summoned as a witness or juror, nor may their land or good be distrained. 7, nor their persons assaulted or character transduced in their period of time covered by this privilege, as the legislators, as part of, as we said, following their standing rule. Before and after the session, with the practice of short provocation under the connivances of the crown amount, in fact, to the perpetual protection against the courts of justice. It said under the propagation, under the connivances of the crown. The synonym for propagation is interregnum. A synonym for connivance is deceitfulness, undermining. We're talking about white-collar crimes, y'all. That brings us here. Got the 18 United States Code 713, because the presidents are violating by way of them not dealing with how the Great Seal was supposed to be established from how they adopted it under the common law. Because we know there's only one common law, and that's the common law of England. Okay, let's move forward. We see what Thomas Jefferson said. So, I think just pretty much covered everything. So this brings me to my conclusion. We know that, going back to the Great Sale of the United States, that Eugene de Simitière proposed the 6 nations who peopled North America. And on August 20th, 1776, this matter was tabled. And we know to be tabled in the United States, i.e. America, which means to dispose of, suspend, abolish. In England, under the common parliamentary procedure, it means to bring up for discussion, review, decide, certify. Okay? This is not being done. So as a result of that, they're in violation of the law, and justice must take its course. And what do I mean by that? We know that the White House is the seat of government where the president sits through his executive officer. And we know that the Capitol is where the legislative sits. The executive branch no longer follows what the legislative says. But the legislative is the one who makes the laws for the liberty of the people. And the liberty of the people goes back to the people. But America is not a people. It's a corporation. It's not a public entity. We should know that because they were colonies, and colonies at that time were corporations according to the July 2nd, 1776 Constitution. Then they declared their independence on July 4th, 1776, which they declared their independence by creating a seal of their sovereignty for commerce, as it just said. All right? So as a result of this lie, this white-collar crime, look what has happened. This is your White House. It's the official residence. Residence means to reside, just like the word preside. So it's fitting for the president to reside and preside in a particular workplace. His office, he doesn't own it. Nor do the states own it, because the state is not a sovereign entity. Nor is the United States a sovereign entity, because the state at one time were colonies, and colonies were at one time property. All right? The White House, or before I go there, for all those who want their liberty, the only way you can have liberty is do this. This was William Blackstone's commentary. These are the sages, the judges, who reports the customary law that does not run contrary to the use based off their records, which is based off their opinions, reports, commentaries, etc., which they decide under oath in lieu of the absolute right of every Englishman, which taken in their political and extensive sense are usually called their liberties, as they are founded on nature and reason. So they are coeval with our form of government, though subject at times to fluctuate and change. The establishment, excellent as it is, being still human, at some time we have seen them depressed by overbearing and tyrannical princesses, as others so luxuriant as even to tend to anarchy. A worse state than tyranny itself, as any government, is better than none at all. What they said in the cell, let's just go to it. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. The same language. I read it again. It said, as sometimes we have seen them depressed by overbearing and tyrannical princes, as others so luxuriant as even to tend to anarchy. A worse state than tyranny itself, as any government, is better than none at all. But the vigor of our free constitution has always delivered the nation from this embarrassment. You hear that? Our free constitution has always delivered the nation from these embarrassments. But the only original constitution of any state is the one on July 2nd, 1776. Because every other constitution of every state in the United States is rooted in that. And at that time, it was colony. So it says the vigor of our free constitution has always delivered the nation from these embarrassments. And as soon as the convulsions consequence on that struggle have been over, the balance of our rights and liberties has settled to its proper level. And their fundamental article has been from time to time asserted in Parliament as often as they were thought to be in danger. You hear that? First, by the greater charter of liberty, i.e. the Magna Carta, which was obtained sword in hand from King John, and afterwards with some alterations confirmed in Parliament by King Henry III, his son, which chartered contained very few new grants, but Sir Edward Coke observes was for the most part declaratory of the principal ground of the fundamental laws of England. Let me just find it where I'm going to. I went too far. All right. Okay. The idea and practice of political and civil liberties flourish in the highest rigor of these kingdoms, where it falls little short of perfection and can only be lost or destroyed by the follies of detriment of its owner. You hear that, y'all? By folly and detriment of its owner. The legislator, of course, the laws of England, being peculiarly adapted to the preservation of this estimable blessings, even in the meanest subject. Very different from the modern constitutions of other states, you hear that, on the continent of Europe, and from the genuines of the imperial laws. It said the continent of Europe. You're standing in Europe right now because the Europe descended from Britain, and Britain descended down from England, which is talking about right here. All right, and from the genius of the imperial laws, which in general are calculated to the best and arbitrary and dispositive power of controlling the actions of the subject and the prince or in a few grantees. And this spirit of liberty is so deeply implanted in our Constitution and enrooted even in the very soul that a slave or a Negro, the moment he lands in England, falls under the protection of the laws and so far becomes a free man, though the master rights to his service may be possibly still continue. Why is this so? Let's see. 6. It is not to the soil or to the air of England that Negroes, not slaves, that Negroes are indebted for their liberty, but to the efficiency of a writ of a habeas corpus, which can only be executed by the sheriff in an English county. I do not see how the master's right to the service can possibly continue. It can only arise from a contract, which the Negro in a state of slavery is incapable of entering into with his master. So it's telling you the only person who can issue a writ of habeas corpus is who? Either a sheriff, and a sheriff is called a reeve, and a reeve works for the court. And the only way a habeas corpus can be issued is by a prerogative writ of the king. So there you have it. There are no kings here. So you have no liberties here. Why? Because you're subject to the law, the same condition as Dred Scott, who was under the monarch of what we call the House of Stuarts, who got their start from the House of Tudors, who implanted that red rose by combining the cadet branches, i.e. tribes, who were descendant of my father's house, the House of Plantagenets. This is why your founding fathers called themselves planters. Okay? And this is the reason why justice has come home to serve. And in closing, we know that the seat of these presidents, who at one time were governors, was called the White House, who sits and located at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest in Washington, D.C., and has been the residence of every United States president since John Adams. John Adams was one of those persons who had a hand in creating that seal. Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and and Thomas Jefferson. And all of them in trouble. Why? Because look what happened. Look what's on Zillow, y'all. The White House. The lawn, just look at the lawn in the picture. Same buildings, same panels. Now I got this off TikTok, and Brother Milligan sent it to me, and I typed it in on Zillow, and that's what came up. But if you don't believe me, let's do it for you. This is Zillow, 16 Pennsylvania. Northwest. Right there. 20500. Bingo. It's over. Game is over. It's for sale. So if your government is read by the executive branch, which executes the laws laid down by the legislator, how is he doing business and the White House is empty? It's off the market. It's empty because it's on Zillow. Please. Let's look at it describes it. Home to every American president except George Washington, who chose the site. The White House is a rich history tradition known as the People's House. The complex is made of the executive branch and the flank, blah, 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 blah. So there you have it, y'all. It's checkmate. It is checkmate. And with that, I digress.